Is there anybody, dear friends? Good evening, Alexander.
Uh, Hello, Tatiana. How are you?
How are you today?
I'm fine. You?
Fine, thank you. So, are you ready to talk about the most interesting cities of the world?
Yes, but I don't know so much.
No, we don't need much. Maybe there is in this world a city that you visited or you want to visit very much, or you read something or heard that you consider the most interesting in the world.
I I visited just a couple of cities abroad, uh, and I want to visit. I would like to visit some else. For example, I want to visit. I prefer to visit big cities, for like New York, Tokyo,
Mm,
maybe London and
London, London.
London. Yes.
So, if you had a choice now, just one of these cities, New York, Tokyo, or London, which one would you choose?
Um, it's a difficult question. Maybe I think maybe Tokyo.
Tokyo. Why? What do you know about Tokyo?
Um, I know that it's big city.
Yes, it's very big
Yes.
and very modern with very many modern technologies.
Yes. That's why I interested in this country city.
Alexander, repeat please. You said I am interesting or interested?
Uh, Try to say interested. I think.
Yes,
Sorry.
interested. You may say that Tokyo is a very interesting city
Yes.
and
Yes.
I'm interested to visit this city.
Yes.
Yes, do you like Japanese culture?
Yes, I like Japanese culture. I like watch films about Japanese. I like Japanese technologies, Japanese cars. I have a Japanese car, for example, because I like this, and I mm, I like Japanese um, Japanese fighting. Do you know fight?
Sumo?
Not judo, karate. I did
Sumo?
karate little.
Мгм.
Yes,
Karate. Карате произносится как карate.
karate. Okay,
Karate. Yes.
okay.
Yes, it's very interesting. It's not just simply fight, but it's a kind of philosophy, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Um,
And what about tea ceremony? Do you like the tea ceremony?
Tea ceremony. Mm, maybe uh, if I sorry, if I tried drinking real Japanese tea, maybe I would like it. Yes,
I would like it. I would like it.
I would like.
Yes, it must be very interesting because you see, it's very strict ceremony. So first you need to try tea and say something to your neighbor on the right, then to your neighbor on the left, and just in this way. So
I
for
don't
us, it's
know.
very exotic. And sorry,
I didn't know anything about this ceremony. No.
yes, it's very strict rules. It has very strict rules. And if we are in Tokyo now, I think, and you like Japanese culture, I think another city that is not far from there would be Kyoto.
Kyoto.
What do you know about Kyoto? What is the most interesting thing?
I just know the brand Kyoto that made bulbs for car, for example. But I didn't know that it's a city. But I guess that it's often that brands comes from names of cities.
And I think that the most known Kyoto is by its Garden of Stones. Have you heard about it?
Garden of Stones.
Garden of Stones.
Сад камней?
Да.
Interesting.
So
No,
you see, when people say Garden of Stones, everybody imagines something like very rich garden and a lot of stones there. Nothing of the kind. Garden of the Stones, it's something like a small stadium. So people sit, my amphitheater, and down it's a small ground of just earth and different sizes of stones stand there. Many people are disappointed. And Japanese come just meditate there. And when you tried this fighting, did you try meditation?
Meditation?
Mm-hmm.
No, just when we did training.
Yes.
After training, we usually sit and do nothing. We sat and did nothing and meditate maybe.
Yes, it's very important for Japanese and Chinese culture. Right. After Tokyo, let's go to New York. Why would you like to visit New York?
Because I saw a lot. I saw New York on TV often, and it looks modern. I inspired by high buildings, and that's why I would like to be there and watch this. And
so if you live there, you'd prefer to live somewhere up? Yes?
Yes.
In skyscrapers.
Yes.
Yes. And another interesting thing about New York, maybe that it's one of the most cosmopolitan cities.
What does it mean, cosmopolitan?
Космополитический, то есть там очень много разных национальностей.
Yes.
So, and not just one or two representatives. but communities. And they have very special style of living. You see, just in, for example, in Russian districts, almost nobody speaks English. And they have all food very typical for Russia many years ago when they left. Type of foods that we don't have anymore here in Ukraine or in Russia. So they're just very conservative. This is with Chinese, Italians, and so on. Right. And the third choice of yours, London. Why would you like to go to London?
London.
It has high buildings, but not as high as in New York or Tokyo.
Yes, I want to be in London maybe because I want to see people, English people, and maybe practice English with native speakers, and maybe to sightsee something.
Yes, yes, it's very interesting city. You know that it was founded by Romans, ancient Romans, when they came to Britain. And the first name of London is Londinium.
Londinium.
Yes, so it has almost 2,000 years. So not many cities can boast such a nature. And what is the structure of London? Do you know?
Sorry.
What is the structure of London?
Structure?
Yes, I mean that usually people divide London into three parts: East End, West End, and City.
I didn't
Only
know.
very yes, yes, it's a very interesting district. West End is very rich district. Only rich and powerful and famous people live there. East End is rather poor. And City is very, very small. It's business center. Sometimes they call City square mile, квадратная миля. Hello, Evgeny.
Hi.
So why it is called square mile? Because it is true. It's a territory really only a square mile. And it's very interesting contrast. The population, as it's called there, night population, so people who live there, who sleep there, spend night there, is only 5,000. But in the daytime, 400,000 people come to work there, in the banks, offices, and so on. So you see, all the business banks are gathered in this district.
Okay.
Another interesting thing, I think, maybe St. Paul's Cathedral. Have you heard about it?
No. No.
It's the second in the world. The first, I mean, by its dimensions. The first is in Vatican, St. Paul, and the second, St. Peter, and the second, St. Paul, is in London. Evgeny, we are now visiting London. So, what would you like to visit if you are in London? Evgeny doesn't hear us. Right. So, what else? Do you like visiting museums?
Museums? Maybe I would like. I don't visit museums last time, but if I have free time, maybe I would visit.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of museums do you prefer? Painting museums, or, for example, some historical museums? I
Maybe
don't know. There is no topic in the world that in London it wouldn't be this museum. Museum of Sciences, Museum of Paintings, museums of anything.
maybe
What kind of museum would you like to visit?
maybe historical or scientist. In childhood, we went to Краеведческий музей. Yeah,
Hmm? Natural.
nature.
Yes. Absolutely different, this science museum. And there are some interesting, you see, some interesting topics of scientific achievements. But they have wonderful, you just remembered when you were small, they have wonderful, absolutely wonderful part for children. It's not like in our museums. Don't touch, step away, don't move, don't shout. Not a big pleasure for children. But children can play with some things that are like scientific achievements.
But if
They have something like machines, something like, so they can touch and play with it. I think it's very interesting. It must be very interesting for children.
what if they broke down something?
And you see, they are polite children as a rule. And of course, they give them rather rough stuff, not to be broken easily. And have you ever heard about such museum of Madame Tussauds?
I have heard, but I don't know anything.
Can you imagine? It's museum of wax figures.
Uh, where is it?
So all wax, восковые фигуры,
And where is it?
wax
Wax?
in London.
In London?
Wax, давайте я напишу, как это пишет. Сейчас. Вот это
Wax. Это
воск.
воск.
Wax.
Мгм.
Воск. Мгм. All people well known in history and of modern times are made from wax and painted. They look absolutely like living people.
Yes,
And they dressed.
yes,
And
have
if you
heard.
like, you can make a photo with them and come back home and show that you are with Beatles or Rolling Stones or Queen Elizabeth or something like this.
Why it's named by Madame Tussauds? Is she owner of this museum? Yes.
No, she's a founder. She's Madame Tussauds. She's French, as you notice from her surname. She came to London in times of French Revolution.
Mhm.
Just escaped because times were very dangerous then. And she came there and just founded this museum. Very complicated business. It's not just simple wax, because otherwise, when it's hot, it just melts. It has something like a skeleton inside. And sometimes it's really frightening. So much these figures resemble modern people. And they have very special part in this museum of well-known criminals. It's really horrible faces.
Dracula.
Right. So, what else is well known in London? Maybe Trafalgar Square. Do you know what is a Trafalgar Square?
When I learned English, I read something about Trafalgar Square, but I don't know what is it. I heard
Trafalgar
just
Square is a square where there is Nelson Column. Nelson is a chief, military chief, who just had a victory in very important battle with Spain. And it was not far from Trafalgar. this victory was very important for the British because there was risk that some parts of their colonies can be captured by Spanish. So that's why. And you see, this Trafalgar Square, maybe it illustrates how time changes our opinions. So it's rather big square. In the middle, there is a column with Nelson up and 4 lions around this column. When it was just erected, everybody said that it's absolutely horrible lions. It's impossible that they allowed to put such barbar sculptures in the center of London. But now they became just one of the symbols of London. But at the beginning, nobody liked them.
I know
Yes?
just one symbol. It's Big Ben and
Yes, Big Ben,
bricks.
of course. And do you know why it is called Big Ben?
Big Ben. I don't remember, but I have heard something. Big Большой Ben. I can't say.
Very interesting. Can you see the history of these names? Big Ben, it was the name of a chief of builders who built this Westminster Tower. He was rather tall and just big man, and it was his nickname, Big Ben. But he was a very kind person, and all workers liked him very much. And like a joke, they called this clock Big Ben in honor of their chief. And they just called it just between them. But in the end of the day, everybody knows Big Ben. It's like a proper name of this clock. And have you heard about Tower?
What tower?
I mean, now не башня, а именно как имя собственное. Tower.
Tower. I heard.
Tower. What
No,
is it?
I don't know.
It seems to me it's one of the most interesting museums, not only in London, but in the world. First tower was something like a fortress. It was some territory just surrounded with a high wall that protected people inside. Then it became a palace, king's residence. Then it became prison. And for a long time it was a prison. Now it's a museum. And there ravens live. What is raven?
Raven?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Raven. Raven. No.
Ворон.
Sorry.
Ворон.
Ворон?
Ворон.
Птица?
Только не путать с вороной. Птица, ворон. Do you know such bird?
Yes.
It's
I
a
know.
big black bird. They don't live in cities.
Yes.
And so, long ago, a couple or several couples of ravens just started to live there in London, in the tower in London. And they lived there for a rather long time. And in difficult for Britain times, something like a wizard came to the king and told him, until ravens live in tower, the Great Britain would be one of the most important countries in the world. But if ravens leave, the country will be destroyed.
Interesting.
And what was the decision of the king? He just ordered to clip them wings. Do you understand me?
They
Clip.
cut it.
Yes, cut, неправильный. Cut.
Ah, yes, cut. They cut wings.
Мимо крылья, это именно clip. It's not wing itself, it's just feathers of the wing, so they can't fly.
Okay.
So just the wealth and power of Great Britain is just sure. And now it's very interesting that a special military man, it's just his position to feed ravens. And he's not a soldier, he's an officer of rather a high rank. And all he does in the army, he feeds ravens. Such a British. Right. So we spoke, I think, enough about London, but about London it's possible to talk hours and days. Where shall we go next? What other cities would you like to visit?
I didn't think, but I want to visit Paris again next year.
Have you been in Paris already?
Yes, I have been once in Paris.
Oh, tell me something about Paris. What did you like best of all in Paris?
I liked buildings. They are not like in Russia buildings. They built in specific design.
Special design.
Special
yes.
design. And the city looks unusually not like other cities.
Yes, it's very special. It has its own face.
Roads,
boulevards.
The structure of roads is too unordinary.
Yes. And what places of interest have you visited? What places of interest have you visited?
I want.
No. Have you visited?
Okay.
I mean, when you were in Paris.
I visited the tower of
Eiffel Tower. Yes.
Eiffel Tower. Yes, of course. I visited Triomphальная арка.
L'Arc de Triomphe en français. And if you visited l'Arc de Triomphe, so you visited Champs-Élysées.
Maybe I don't know that it's Champs-Élysées.
This street where this Arc of Triomphe is situated is called Елисейский Palais, Champs-Élysées.
Okay. And else
Have you visited Louvre?
Sorry?
Louvre. Have you visited Louvre?
Yeah. Yes, and that the last place which I visited, Louvre. And I had just 2 days for walking, and I can't see any more places. I couldn't.
Yes, it's not enough for Paris.
Yes.
You know that they say that if you visit Louvre and spend 1 minute at each thing, so you must spend a couple of months only in Louvre.
I haven't come to museum of Louvre. I just walking around and во дворе, где пирамида.
Yes, I see. Yeah, these pyramids. Yes. But in Paris, yes.
And else I visited the place where I stay at night. It was Montmartre. Montmartre.
Mhm, mhm. Yes, it's a very nice place.
Yes.
And
That,
in Paris, maybe just walking in the streets, it's as important as visiting museums. The streets have very special atmosphere. You've noticed it, yes?
yes.
All these cafes just in the street, not inside but outside, and all these people. Yes, that's right. And what city do you live?
Uh, where do I live?
Yeah, yes.
I live in Ulyanovsk.
Jonas, can you tell me about your city? So, if somebody comes to visit your city, what should we visit?
Uh, I think they uh, obligatory should visit uh, um, places near the river because
And
there
what
is
river is there in your city?
river is Volga.
Mhm.
There is a nice view on the river because river is wide in that place. Near the town, the width of river is about 3 or 7 kilometers.
Really?
Yes.
It's very difficult even to imagine. You
Uh,
know, I saw Volga in Kazan,
okay.
and it impressed me very much. And so in Kazan, it's not so wide as in
Yes.
Ulyanovsk.
Yes, it's not so wide like in Ulyanovsk. In Ulyanovsk, it's wider.
It impressed me very much because I just compared it with Dnieper. So more water. No, it's just like an animal, like a creature, like living creature. I liked Volga very much. Yeah, and Ulyanovsk is on one side of Volga, on both.
Ulyanovsk is on the both of side of Volga, and we have two bridges. Uh, one bridge have one bridge is old and it's built in the beginning of uh, 20th century, uh,
Mhm.
last century, not this century, last.
Mhm.
And
Conscious, yes, sure.
and his its length is about 3 kilometers, and in 2009 we was built a new bridge. Uh, it's about 7 kilometers.
Mhm. Is it enough? Only two bridges.
Yes,
Is it
it's
enough?
enough. It's
Mhm.
yes, it's much better than when we have just one bridge, and it's always uh, there were there were always traffic jams, uh,
Mhm.
and two times and two bridge it's enough because new bridge is bigger and have
Yes,
um, has
stated
a two-way uh,
ways. Mhm.
in one
Mhm.
направление,
Direction.
in one direction, and two ways in other direction.
Mhm.
Um, maybe in future there will be a tram on the bridge, and we have a museum of Lenin House because
Yes, of course.
not, um,
And Alexander, it always was called Ulyanovsk. You didn't change name to Simbirsk. In Lenin time, it was called Simbirsk. You
Yes,
didn't
yes.
lately.
We didn't change name. We called Ulyanovsk this time, but it was talkings about change, but
Rumors.
a rumor.
Rumors.
Yes, yes. What can I?
And how big is it? What is the population approximately of Ulyanovsk?
In Ulyanovsk, there are 600,000 people.
600,000. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that cities, towns that have population less than millions are very nice, because when you have several millions, it's horrible.
Yes, we sometimes think about how it's right to call city or town, and when I drove one British man, we talking, and I asked him how it's right to call our city or town or city, and he answered that he thinks that if we have if our city located on two bridges, берега, я забыл, beach, no.
Sides, riverside.
Bridge at the yes, on the two river sides, and we have two bridges, and we have two airports. He thinks that we can call it city.
Yes, you see, it's very difficult to compare with England, because their city may be much smaller and town. And by the way, how would you translate into Russian? He lived in a big town.
Sorry, could you repeat?
He lived in a big town.
He lived in a big town?
Yes, translate, please.
Он жил в большом городе?
Уверены? Что такое town?
Может быть, я не знаю, может по-английски деревня?
Нет, town это маленький городок. Но вот вы же сейчас говорили, city is a big thing and town is a small thing.
Yes.
So if it's a big town, it's small in comparison with the city. So you should translate он жил в небольшом городке. Nevertheless, it would be bigger. Because we don't have two words in Russian, city and town. We have only город. And you see, just Житомир, Smolensk, it is город, and Moscow and St. Petersburg.
То есть для них это разные вещи, да, совсем? Понятно.
Yes, that's right.
And I wanted to say that in our city we have a lot of factories. We build cars, Wazik, for example, and we build planes. If you know, we built the biggest plane on An-124 Ruslan.
Oh yes, I heard about it. So it's something like jumbo jet?
Sorry?
It's something like jumbo jet? Jumbo jet – это так называемый аэробус.
Ну, у нас это грузовой самолет. То есть...
but they may be different. Jumbo jet is something that many cars, lorries can enter it. It's as big as this jumbo jet.
Не совсем понял. Много.
Jumbo jet — это не совсем грузовой самолет, это огромный грузовой самолет.
Ну, наверное, он огромный, даже самый огромный.
Have you seen the film Aviator with DiCaprio starring?
Yeah,
Aviator.
I have seen, but so long time ago, I don't remember.
So there, DiCaprio plays a real person, a person who first built jumbo jet in America, and it was during the World War II. And they just show there several shootings, very impressive. They show how it just starts. It's incredible how such a weight can just get up. So Ruslan is something like this, yes?
Maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And if I know you are from Ukraine, is Kiev.
Yes, from Ukraine.
I know that in your country is built
Antonov.
Antonov. Yes, it's almost the same plane, but it has more engines than us. But they are like brothers.
But Antonov, I don't think that they build huge planes. They are not so big.
They built in past the biggest plane, Mriya. Have you heard it?
You see, maybe it was earlier, but now it's very difficult situation, like in everything in Ukraine now, with this factory.
Yes, of
because
course.
you see these political things, and they try to catch power there, and so it's very difficult. People who work there, they go striking very often just to preserve, to keep this factory.
Yes,
because so no money, no financing, and they have hard times. So I don't think that they're doing something at the moment.
Yes, of course. In our factory, we don't build these planes now. We just use that remain, and in future maybe we will continue, but it's difficult to restart again building of so big planes.
Yes, sure. Almost all the factories here in Kiev have such problems. So one part is in Russia, another part in Belarus, something in Ukraine, and they just lost a lot. And if I ask you to call you the most beautiful city in Russia, what city or town you tell me?
Okay, if the most beautiful which I visited or at all?
Oh, you visited or saw, you know, now you may see in internet better than you see when you visit.
I guess, like people say that the most beautiful city is St. Petersburg, I think.
Yes, that's right. It's a unique city. It's not one of the most beautiful in Russia, but in the world.
Okay.
So, and it has absolutely unique character because, you see, it's Russian city, but all the buildings are built by French, Italian, Dutch architects. And everybody brought something from his country. And altogether, it's extraordinary.
Maybe I should visit it any time. this city.
Yes, yes, of course. If you have possibility, it's wonderful. And this winter palace that they have, it is not so rich as Louvre, but almost as rich. And it is built by Rastrelli. And outside, it seems to me, it's much more beautiful than Louvre.
But if if I would say about cities I visited, maybe the most beautiful last time I would say Kazan. When I visited Kazan last time, I was surprised. It's a nice, beautiful, big building.
Have you visited it before restoration or after restoration? They have a kind of anniversary and made a huge restoration there.
First time I visited when I was a child. I don't remember that time, and last
No,
time
it was about 8 years ago that they had this anniversary.
I visited first time I visited about 30 years ago. I remember just churches, or its other names.
Churches and mosques. What's interesting that they have churches, Christian churches, and Islamic mosques, just one by one near the other.
I don't remember. But when I visited last time, about 3 years ago, it was my imagination, my impression.
Yes, yes, you're quite right. Yes. I like this city also very much. It's very, very special. And I like very much old part of Kazan. They had these buildings typical for Tartar, very special architecture. And the Kremlin is really impressive. Is it far from Ulyanovsk, Kazan?
No, it's not far. It's about 250 kilometers.
Yes, not far in
It's about,
dimensions of Russia.
About 4 hours of driving.
I see. Because I remember I went to Kazan via Moscow, and it took me one night to go, more than one night to go to Moscow, and it seems to me 2 nights from Moscow by train. So it was very long way to Kazan.
Yes, it's too long. Usually, it's about less than 1 day, about 20 maybe hours. It's from Moscow to Ulyanovsk, but to Kazan it's not. It's less time.
Less, so it's closer to Moscow than Ulyanovsk.
I thought it's a little closer. And have you ever been in Samara?
No.
No? It's a city near the Ulyanovsk too, about...
Артикль не нужен, городу не нужен, только the Hague с артиклем.
А где
Вы сказали перед городом артикль, не нужен.
Перед городом?
Не нужен.
Near Samara, yes, near Ulyanovsk. It's a big city. There are about 1,500,000 people.
It's rather big. And what is special about Samara? What do they do? What do they produce in Samara?
There are a lot of factories. For example, they were built planes Il-2 when Second War was. It's what can I else say? It's a beautiful city on the river, but river not so wide there.
And what river? Also Volga?
Also Volga, yes.
And tell me please, Alexander, in Samara and Ulyanovsk, except Russian population, what population do you have? I mean just the population that lived there before Russians.
What do you mean, people from other countries?
For example, Kazan, it's Tartars. Yes?
Yes.
And then Ivan the Terrible took Kazan, and it began to belong to Russia. And Ulyanovsk, what nationalities live there?
I know in Ulyanovsk a lot of nationalities lives. Usually people.
А почему live, если a lot? S не нужен. Это только если одна, тогда lives. А если много, live.
Live. There is some joke about nationalities.
Tell me please.
It's not big, it's small. That all people, all nationalities in Ulyanovsk call Chumatare. It's from Chuvashi, Mordva Tatari.
So many different nationalities.
Yes.
I see. And do they differ a lot? I mean, not from Russians, but from Chuvashi, from Mordva, from Tartar.
I think a lot of from every republic. Sometimes I can't take difference.
Can't tell the difference. Это в данном случае tell будет не сказать, а отличить.
Okay.
And I can't tell the difference.
I can't tell the difference
between these nationalities. Yes.
Yes. And we have in our city a lot of people. I can't tell difference from Vietnam or Chinese.
Really?
Yes, they usually work on markets. They sell things, clothes.
The same in Kiev. Yes, we also have a lot of Chinese recently, just several years.
I think they are everywhere. When I was in Germany and Paris, there were a lot of.
Yes, and in Britain, even in Britain, they have more Indians and Pakistani, but Chinese as well. Right, Alexander, thank you very much for your stories about your cities. You see, I expected to travel somewhere in Europe and America, and I visited Russian cities. It was a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye.